Welcome, everyone. Today, I want to give a talk on how to protect yourself, how to stay in your own territory, your own range. And if you're familiar with my teachings, you will have heard me say 1,000 times, sit comfortably, spread your awareness throughout your whole body, and just feel how the awareness is at home in the body. And you can do that right now. Just spread your awareness throughout the whole body, from your head to your toes, you know, out to your fingertips and your toes, and just see if you can just, recognize that when the awareness is embodied, it's a natural, there's a natural sense of at home, resting, safe, protected. It's interesting. I've heard that the ajahns, the teachers from Thailand, but these Buddhist monks would talk about how when the awareness is spread throughout the whole body, we're actually protecting ourselves from external forces like spirits or demons. And you hear about that type of thing quite a bit. Um, when it comes to the lineage of forest dwelling monks in the wilderness tradition, or what's called the Thai forest tradition, um, which is really interesting, to me anyway. This idea of monks dwelling in the forest, no safety, no protection, in places where they come across all kinds of things, including animals and snakes and things like that, right? Um, and in fact, when you think about the Buddha's sasana, this group of monks that he set up, there he didn't teach them, Shaolin style martial arts or anything like that to protect themselves. He gave them other means of self-protection. And once again, spread your awareness throughout the whole body. I'm going to get to a sutta, but I'm just wondering if you can tune into the feeling of protectedness that naturally arises when the awareness is here with the body. And remember, in meditation, we can fake it till we make it because we're learning perceptual skills. So you can actually give rise to the perception of being protected and trust that. There's an image coming to my mind of an X-Men character that's kind of lesser known, but her name is Armor. So she's, I think Japanese. She's an Asian character, and her mutant ability, right? For those of you who are familiar with X-Men, her mutant ability is her ancestors' energies come together to form this huge kind of like monstrous armor around her. Um, that's like this pink color, right? So you can look it up if you Google X-Men armor. Uh, and so it's like her ancestors are coming together to form this energetic barrier around her body, and she goes from this like, petite, skinny little sort of girl to this force, this kind of like samurai sort of force, which is an image that's coming to my mind. And I think a lot of us sort of want that. We might have some sense that as human beings, we are sensitive and affected by, influenced by things around us. Um, Other people in particular tend to have an effect on us. And perhaps for each of you who might listen to this talk, you can think about a particular family member or a particular coworker, someone in your life who, when they're around you, they seem to really have some kind of influence on you energetically. Like if they might be argumentative, or they might laugh at you or be insulting, um or maybe they're really good at instigating you or getting you to do social things that you don't particularly want to do, or it could be a whole host of different things. But when they're around you, their energetic sort of vibration, or their disposition, their emotionality, their moods, their preoccupations tend to have a disproportionate effect on you. So they really affect you more than maybe other people. There's someone who's coming to my mind who tends to like to argue, uh, and sort of will never change their minds on an argument on that particular day. And maybe like a few months from then, they'll completely change their mind, right? But on that particular day, they're going to stand their ground. And so when I'm around this person, if I'm not practicing mindfulness of the body, awareness, I am prone to kind of getting sucked up into this argument, and all of a sudden there being this charge. There's like a chargedness that this person can carry, a charge that they can carry, like an electrical charge almost. And then that can rub off on me, and it can linger for a couple days, and I need to kind of spend some time to get back into my own rhythm, my own vibration. Um, and I think one of the things that actually happens when you meditate, or can happen, is you can become more and more sensitive to this sort of thing. So it's important to learn how to protect yourself. And um, I remember one of my teachers, Willa Reed, she once said at this retreat, Dhamma is energetic. Dhamma is energetic, not in terms of high energy like the Energizer Bunny, right? But in terms of there's something sort of vibrational. Um, Metaphysical is the wrong word, but energetic. And she so brilliantly defined the chitta, this word that's translated as mind or heart, this Pali word. She defined it as the aspect of our being that feels. And the Buddha had said that the chitta is something that trembles. So you can think about like a rabbit. If you're going for a walk or a run and a rabbit sees you, you can kind of see them tremble. So the chitta is an aspect of our being that is affected, that trembles. And the Buddha had said that when we find nibbana, when we fully awaken, the chitta no longer trembles. So nothing can really affect us anymore. Nothing can stir us up. There's this beautiful Pali word, tamyata, which means unconcoctability. The heart can no longer be concocted or stirred. This is the goal of Dhamma practice. This is where Dharma is heading. So how do we protect ourselves? There's a beautiful sutta, or discourse that the Buddha gives 2,500 years ago. It's Samyutta Nikaya 47 dot 6, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll try and remember to put it in the show notes. Um, and the English translation for the name of the sutta is the hawk, sometimes called the falcon or the eagle. And in this teaching, the Buddha gives a simile. He kind of tells this little story of a baby quail. So I'll tell you a little bit about this story. So there's this baby quail who's in his nest, and the mother quail is out for the day looking to get food for her babies. And this baby quail is uh, hanging out on the top of the nest, kind of singing and dancing, exposed rather than hiding within the nest. So a eagle or falcon swoops down and catches it. And as the falcon is flying away, the baby quail, is saying, "Oh no, if I had just stayed within my own territory, you wouldn't have been able to capture me." So the baby quail is kind of taunting the falcon. And so the falcon lets him go. The falcon, his attitude is, "No, I'm a falcon. I would have caught you no matter where you were. So I'm going to let you go and then I'm going to catch you again." Um, and so the baby quail then goes to this field where the dirt was recently plowed. And the if modern day, right, we don't really plow fields, right? So essentially, as I understand it, there's this image of when you've plowed the field, there's dirt and rock. There's like what they call a clod in the sutta. So there's, imagine like a rock or a clump of dirt sticking out from the ground. And so the baby quail then kind of taunts again, is singing and dancing. And so the falcon sees it, swoops back down. And then at the last second, the baby quail hides underneath this clod, this stone, and the falcon crashes into it, into the clod, and then dies. And so the Buddha says, and I encourage you to read the sutta, um, so you can clearly see exactly the words of the Buddha, and I'll link that again in the show notes. But essentially, the Buddha says he talks about the simile of when you're in your own domain, your ancestral territory, you are protected. So don't stray from that. Don't go into another's domain. This is how you stay protected. And he says that through our senses, we go into the domain of others. So through sight, smell, hearing, touching, tasting, and through thinking. Remember, in the Dhamma, there are six senses, and the sixth is um, the thinking, cognition, ideas, ideation, right? So that's how we leave ourselves unprotected. That's how Mara, the sort of demon of the universe, can come in and affect us, to say nothing of others. And then the Buddha says, how do you stay in your own domain? How do you stay in your own resort, your ancestral territory? It's through the four Satipatthanas, what are called the four frames of reference or the four foundations of mindfulness. The first of which is Kayanupassana, mindfulness of the body. So um, that's what we're talking about when I say spread the awareness throughout the whole body. So again, as you're listening, spread your awareness throughout your whole body. And so mindfulness of the body is this capacity and skill that we can develop of staying present with this body. And see if you can feel how when the mind engages in thinking, when the mind gets entangled, when the mind goes to the past or the future, when the mind starts clinging, how the awareness of the body is not there. It's almost as if the mind has shot out somewhere else. The mind's gotten really small and shot out at something else. And that is like the baby quail leaving his territory. This is why it's part of why I'm always emphasizing, rather than the mind being small, the field of awareness being small or narrow, I really recommend spreading it throughout the whole body. take a good posture, sit comfortably, stand comfortably, walk comfortably, lay down comfortably, stay somewhat symmetrical, relaxed, both upright and relaxed, dignified and soft. And then spread the awareness throughout the whole body. And then mindfulness is the capacity to stay with that. And don't worry, the mind will run away. That's what minds do. That's how we're conditioned. Don't take that personally. Don't judge yourself. Just come back. Feel the whole body. Part of the reason I want to talk about this is, recently I'd spent a chunk of time where I I've I sort of stayed home for a few weeks, didn't really go out, didn't really interact with too many people other than my wife, and then went to a social thing and um, was sort of around one of these arguments that was very charged, and in part because I hadn't really been training myself well to deal with these kinds of scenarios, I sort of lurched into this conversation and got that sort of electrical charge came into my energetic body. And I was when I came back home, I was reflecting on how prior to this I'd gotten into this really good habit of, what particularly when I'm around people who seem to have this kind of particular influence um over me, and this is very common with family members, with certain family members, right? And certain coworkers. And so I just sort of reflected, oh yeah, like that's my practice when I'm around this person, is to stay with my body, to not engage in arguments, to not um to really that's my first priority, is to be mindful of my own body and the other three Satipatthanas, which I'll talk about momentarily. And when I do that, I can be in that same situation and just sort of, yeah, that's how you feel. And that's okay, and sort of agree to disagree. I have a different take on this, but so what? It's just a view. Views aren't to be clung to, right? Ultimately, views are to be let go of. As I'm sitting here, I'm engaging in this kayanupassana, this mindfulness of the body. Um, and wow, it can seem like this benign thing that, if you're around Buddhism, you may have heard it 100 times, but man, it's actually really special as you develop it. It leads to the first four jhanas, the form jhanas. Ajahn Mun, this great Arahant teacher, the father of the Thai forest tradition, he said that mindfulness of the body is like gazing at a cave of wonders. And the Buddha had said, it's my understanding that the Buddha had said that one cannot attain nibbana without having mindfulness of the body. Bhante Dhammajiva, this amazing Sri Lankan monk, talks about how powerful even a single moment of mindfulness of the body really is. And it's that we don't appreciate it. but it is really powerful. And for me, I think about this word samadhi, which you're probably familiar with by now. But samadhi, I define as coming together, gathering. Um, the best kind of English translation of the Pali word, in my opinion, that I've come across is collectedness. So you can think about all the elements of your being collecting, your energy collecting here. It's a gathering. The word ekaggata is another Pali word that's one of the five factors of the first jhana, and it's kind of a controversial word, sometimes defined as one pointedness. Um, I think better defined as a single meeting place. So in mindfulness of the body, we make the body a meeting place. It's a gathering ground. So you can think of a group of people coming from all places in the world, coming back home into this gathering ground. So there's a sense of power. One of my favorite images that I like to use in my teachings is that of a Roman emperor or general calling his forces back into the Roman citadel. So you can think of the height of Rome, where Rome is this giant empire, and the soldiers all across, these continents of Europe and Africa, and then he calls all of them back home. Imagine that feeling of consolidation and protection. That's samadhi, right? I should say that's part of it's one way of describing samadhi. Samadhi is a very wide territory, a very wide range, broad range of experience. But there's a sense of collectedness. And one of the definitions of sati, the Pali word defined as mindfulness, is recollectedness. And people talk about that in different ways. I like to think about it as if samadhi is collecting and gathering, mindfulness is a practice of collecting and gathering over and over and over again until the mind can really stay collected. So mindfulness and samadhi are, I think, are related terms. And mindfulness, of course, is the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and or right mindfulness, I should say, is the seventh factor, and it is one of the causal conditions for the eighth factor, the next factor of the Eightfold Path, which is right samadhi, samma samadhi. So anyway, um, yeah, and one interesting way to talk about this is that we have energy bodies. You might have heard me use this term, and I think it's a really helpful term. I remember once I was staying at this monastery and this monk asked me, what's your basic practice? And I said it's mindfulness of the energy body. And he kind of looked at me like what the hell are you talking about? Um, so I had to say, Kayanupassana, mindfulness of the body. But I find it really helpful to think about the energy body, which refers to the subtle energy in the body, the chi. Um, and some teachers like Ajahn Lee and Thanissaro Bhikkhu talk about how the breath, and from their interpretation, when the Buddha's talking about the breath in Anapanasati and breath meditation, it's talking about the air element or the wind element, which includes your chi. It's the energy in the body that flows and moves. We can become sensitive to this. So, um, there's a particular way of looking at the body that unveils this realm of energy of the air element, the wind element. It's as the mind settles and becomes more subtle, more refined, we can become attuned to this. Um, and I like to think that the energy body and energy body practice is actually the meeting place of the four Satipatthanas. The Buddha didn't say anything, like this to my knowledge. It's just this kind of idea that I have. So to kind of take a step back here, again in the sutta, the Buddha says that the four Satipatthanas or foundations of mindfulness, when the mind is in that practice, that is akin to the quail being in his or her own territory, not in another's domain. So there's this image of this baby quail is now protected from the falcon. So we talked about the first frame of reference, mindfulness of the body. Um, I'm going to briefly talk about the other three. Just note that there is, of course, the Sutta, the Satipatthanas Sutta, one of the most famous suttas that I encourage you to read. Um, I'm just going to talk about, some kind of pointers that have been very helpful for me personally. And I should say I actually do believe that these will be helpful for you. So the second frame of reference is Vedana, what's translated as feeling, or nowadays a lot of teachers are calling it feeling tone. So not feelings as like emotions, but there's three forms of Vedana that are commonly talked about, which is basically unpleasant feelings, pleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. Okay. The way I practice with this is what I talk about as sensitivity to dukkha. Dukkha is this Pali word for suffering. So mindfulness, awareness of when there is dukkha, when there is suffering, and when there is freedom from suffering. When you feel bad, when you feel negative, or when you feel positive, when you feel good. And why might the Buddha call this out as being in your own territory and having this protective uh, force when you have mindfulness of Vedana, of feeling? Well, one reason might be that when you're aware of this dimension, dukkha and not dukkha, feeling good, feeling bad, right? Or feeling suffering, feeling non-suffering, right? When you're aware of this, you can quickly identify what's being fabricated in the moment. What's going on? So essentially, in for my own experience, when I've really trained this up, you can be so sensitive to this that as soon as you start to suffer, you can come into this kind of stance of like, oh, suffering is arising. Where is it coming from? How am I fabricating this suffering? How am I participating in this suffering? And that can take you from a very dangerous situation into a much more safe, protected situation. Um, for example, if you're getting into an argument with someone, right? If you can quickly see that, oh, there's this intensity that's arisen that was not here a moment ago. I've waded into murky waters. Let me calm down. Let me find peace in the mind before I speak, before I act. That can save you from a ton of trouble. So this is just one dimension of this frame of reference, but hopefully that's helpful. Um, and and I would say that I think this is a relatively easy capacity to develop because suffering sucks. Um, so it it stings already. One of the things that makes this difficult to develop is that I think in modern day, and you know, this may have this may have been there in ancient times, I don't know, but certainly in modern day times, I think we run from suffering very quickly into neutral feelings, into dullness, into our phones, into alcohol or drugs, into watching TV. Um, And so we can kind of dull our capacity for this level of mindfulness. It's more skillful to, if you're able to come into awareness of that suffering, and then you're able to contemplate, where is this arising from? What mental faculties or qualities in the mind are giving rise to this? And how can I simply divert the mind towards something that is joyful, bright, such as any of the Satipatthanas, such as metta or any of the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity. Okay, so let's move on to the third Satipatthana. Um, so this is mindfulness of chitta, of the mind. Sometimes it's translated as mindfulness of consciousness. And if you look in the sutta, the Buddha talks about, if you look into the Sutta, I should say, the Buddha talks about different ways of practicing mindfulness of the mind. He talks about being aware when ignorance is there in the mind or delusion is there in the mind, when clinging is there, when desire is in the mind, when aversion or hatred is in the mind. So this is understanding. It's awareness of the chitta, right? I like to think of it as, again, the chitta is the aspect of our being that feels. So we can be so in tune with this. Um, we can train ourselves to have this quick response, this quick understanding. Um, this is our present state of mind. As the Buddha says in the, I'm going to butcher the Pali, Bhaddaraka Sutta. It's a famous sutta. I'm butchering the Pali here, but he says something of, he, the practitioner, is aware of each presently arisen state. Let him know that invincibly, unshakably. So we can become so attuned to our capacity to feel, and we can really train ourselves in the Buddha's teachings to be able to identify the defilements, as well as identifying when the heart is in a developed state, when the heart is in samadhi, when the heart is in a higher state. Okay. And then the fourth satipatthana, or frame of reference or foundation for mindfulness, is mindfulness of dhammas, or what's translated as phenomena. And so the Buddha in the Satipatthana Sutta talks about how we can be aware of the five hindrances. We can be aware of the seven factors of awakening. We can be aware of the noble truths. And man, I want to be brief here, so I'll just quickly name out, the five hindrances. Essentially, mindfulness of this dimension of practice is so powerful. And if you know me, I talk a lot about this. So this is like being aware when these five energetic, um, these five energies, these five momentums, these five distortions or obscurations arise in the heart. And they're very, very dominant. They're prolific. They're almost always there unless you're in samadhi. So the five are desire, unskillful desire, wanting what you don't have. It's this feeling of lacking. I don't have enough. That's number one, desire. Number two is aversion, a sense of I don't like what's here. I want to push this away. It includes hatred, boredom, criticism, judgment. Number three is dullness, stagnation, lethargy. It includes depression, heaviness, sleepiness, um, number or in, it used to be called sloth and torpor. That's like the old translation. So sloth, you probably know that. Torpor is like apathy. The fourth hindrance is the opposite of dullness. It's when the energy is dialed too high. It's restlessness, agitation, compulsion, worry. It's when we're overthinking, when we can't rest. And number five is doubt, paralytic doubt, anxiety, uncertainty, skepticism, self-doubt. Wow, how prolific is self-doubt, right? Um, so it's like this lack of trust, lack of confidence. So again, desire, aversion, dullness, restlessness, paralytic doubt. So we can practice awareness of this. And conversely, we can practice awareness of the seven factors of awakening, which are these beautiful, positive qualities that bring us to awakening. So that's mindfulness, inquiry or investigation, uh, virya, energy, effort, persistence, piti, rapture, this well-being, this upliftedness, this quality of sort of blissful energy. Passaddhi, which is typically translated as um, uh, calmness, tranquility in the body, uh, settledness. And then the sixth is samadhi, which we talked about today, coming together, gathering, collectedness, harmony, unification. And then the seventh factor of awakening is equanimity, balance. It's the domain of neither pleasure, no pain, neither good, no bad, equal, steady, unperturbed, unconcerned, level, pristine. Um, it's this non-dualistic, non-entangledness. Okay, so I know that was a lot. What you're meant to do with this is to really start practicing. And remember, in my humble opinion, energy body awareness is the meeting place for all of this. So when we're aware of the energy body, and basically this is spread again, I very simple instruction here. Spread your awareness throughout the whole body. Really feel what it's like to be you right now. Feel the aliveness in the body. So the energy is a subtle energy in the body. If you were to think, if you're looking at someone else, I remember going to a funeral somewhat recently, and this person's loved ones were crowded around his body in this viewing, crying and speaking to the body. And I remember just feeling like I can't feel their energy here. This is a body in which the chi, the energy, has departed. But when you bring your awareness to your own body, can you feel your own aliveness? There's a electricity, a vibration, a vibrancy, a vitality. That's the energy body, and this, the more you practice with this, you'll start to become aware of all kinds of amazing things. So the energy body, of course, you can see where the first Satipatthana is there. Kayanupassana, mindfulness of the body. That's included in the energy body. It includes the physical form of the body, the entire physical field. And then the second frame of reference, Vedana or feeling tone. When you're aware of the energy body, because it's so subtle, you will quickly become aware when there is unpleasant feeling, when there is pleasant feeling, when there's neutral feeling. That's part of the mix. That's part of what you're aware of when you simply spread your awareness out the whole body and subtleize the awareness to feel your chi, your energy. And then the third satipatthana, um, the mindfulness of the chitta. It's really interesting. So chitta is the mind or the heart, right? But um, there's almost this physical quality of the heart. Ajahn Sucitto talks about this, how fear chokes the chitta and heaviness or depression flattens, almost like weighs down the chitta. So when we're aware of the energy body, we're really attuned to the chitta. And certainly these states of chitta, states of mind that come, delusion, hatred, desire, and heightened states, and all the rest that are included in the sutta, that we're attuned to that. That's part of the mix. That's part of what we're present with. And then of course the dhammas, in which in this context is defined as phenomena, such as the five hindrances, the seven factors of awakening, and there's a few others that the Buddha mentions. And I like to think of the 37 factors of awakening. This includes the I like to think about basically all the dhammas that the Buddha taught. The four Brahma Viharas, these heart qualities that are beautiful, the 10 perfections, like, things like determination and renunciation and virtue and generosity. They all have these tones and qualities and vibrations, um, that we can feel. And for me, if I listen to a Dhamma talk about a particular quality, like let's say determination, and I'm sitting there listening with my awareness spread throughout the whole body, there's this energetic tone that comes into the body. Determination has a certain color to it, or range of colors, I should say. So this ended up being a talk about the four Satipatthanas and the energy body practice. I hope that's helpful. Um, yeah, wow. There's a real protectedness in this. I should mention that in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha talks about mindfulness in conjunction with or together with putting aside grief and distress for the world, or um, covetousness and grief for the world. In other words, clinging. So desire and aversion, this push and pull, wanting something, wanting to pull it towards us, pushing something away. And I do find this to be important. Mindfulness, when the Buddha talks about mindfulness, it's often together with something like this. There's other suttas where he says things like, always mindful, see the world as empty. Always mindful, do not cherish. So here, mindfulness such that you put aside grief and distress for the world, covetousness and grief for the world, clinging. So this is how we protect ourselves. It's like when the awareness is home here, here in the body, here in our experience, when we're really awake, really alive, alert to what's going on here with us, not out there, not in the past or the future, not somebody else, here. When we're here, when someone's home, it's harder for an intruder to get into the house. This is a safety. Here the baby quail is protected from the falcon. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about the layers of richness in the similes that the Buddha uses, and how the baby quail is protected when he's on the earth. In fact, a little bit underground, you know, when a field has been plowed and there's a clump of dirt or a clod, that means that there's like a little hole in the ground, and that's where the baby quail is able to duck into. And conversely, when he's snatched up by the falcon, he's up in the air. And I don't know if this is something the Buddha intended, but I do find that there are many, many interesting layers to the similes that he uses. But there's a sense of when we're grounded. So as I'm sitting here energetically, I'm feeling the earth beneath me, the sense of being rooted, connected to the ground like a tree. There's a sense of protectedness there, unlike when we're kind of floating up, just sort of in a haze, floating around, bumping into things. When we're not grounded, when we're not rooted, then things come and snatch us. And if you're someone who wants to help others, I really feel that this is a prerequisite. And I can say from my own experience, if you take up, the sort of mission of trying to help others, whether it's teaching Dharma or healing others or talking to others or, trying to console others, if you're not protected, if you're not really safe within yourself, um, these efforts can bring up a lot of challenges. So I really encourage you to take time to become whole within yourself. And if and when you ever are influenced or affected by the energy or disposition of others, don't blame them. You may be right that there's something going on that side that is wrong or not skillful, but that's not your domain. You don't have control there. So let that go. Come into this practice of mindfulness. Come under the shade. Collect yourself. Gather here. May all beings, seen and unseen, living near or far, large, medium, or small, friendly or unfriendly, sharing the blessings springing from this teaching. By the power of these merits, may all beings be well. May all beings be well. May all beings be well. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. To the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, bow down.